Hey, it's Paul Seaver from Palm Beach Springs Water Company. Another week, another video, except in this case, another day, another video. I'm actually doing this on Sunday morning. Why? I'm not even in my company uniform. But anyway, funny story about this t-shirt, but that's for another day. What we're going to talk about today has to do with some conversations that have been going on LinkedIn. You know, here we're back in cyanobacteria season. Cyanobacteria, blue-green algae, that nasty stuff that stinks so bad and turns all the water green. There's a lot of subjects about how to take care of things and what's the best systems to use, and there's quite a few of them on the market. And down here in South Florida, we probably have the strictest standards of what you can and can't do with surface waters, you know, because of the sensitive ecosystem down here. So it's pretty tough. You can't add, you pretty much, you know, I'm sure there's some exceptions to the rule out there, but you can pretty much bank on the fact that you're not allowed to add nothing to the water. So a lot of this stuff that you see researched and stuff, you're just not going to be able to use here. Now, one of the things that has become more popular here is oxygen and ozone or oxygen-2 ozone generators. You know, but they come with their own problems. You know, oil and water doesn't mix, and neither does concentrated gas. I don't want to get too deep into the entire subject, but I do have some illustrations to prove my point of in the beginning here of what we're going to talk about. Gotta move my stuff out of the way. So some people may have seen, I posted a PowerPoint online. I have it on my website and it's on LinkedIn. Okay, and that's what the cover of it looks like. Electrolyzing water. Now what the PowerPoint really is about absorption. And what this subject really is, it's about absorption. So, well, the way I'm going to describe it, it's about absorption. How can you kill cells in a bioselective way without harming the environment and without changing the environment? You have to do it in a very well-balanced way. Now, I'm not going to get on poo-pooing on oxygen or ozone, okay? But they're very limited. Those guys know they're very limited. Most of the time, they can show their performance in off-season. But when season comes around, all bets are off. They're not strong enough, okay? So they're using mass transfer, or trying to use mass transfer, in an environment that they're not suited for, because they're pumping a concentrated gas into water. It wants to rise to the top and take off. So they have all sorts of problems with that. I'm not going to harp on that. What I'm going to tell you is what the solution to that is. Because these are the guys I'm talking to. I'm trying to get your attention. If you believe that in every business and every science and every piece of equipment and every method that's used for anything to control something has to always be in a constant state of evolution, then your ears should be open. Because here's your next evolution to your system. And I know it very well. You don't have to explain nothing to me about your systems. I know everything I need to know about them. So very quickly, just as a brief, now this has to do with water, but without the water you don't have the gases anyway. So you can imagine just the water molecules that are represented as acidic and basic. Just imagine them represented as gases. You have your red plus sign, that's going to represent your reactive oxygen, and you have your blue minus sign, which represents hydrogen. Although in your systems, you're not going to have the hydrogen. So you're just going to have to imagine, what if you did? Well, here is what if you did. Okay, so here's your typical ambient surface water, ambient temperature surface water. And here's the gases you're trying to pump in, but really this has to do with electrochemistry. So in single polarity electrochemistry, you're breaking it up into a nanocluster. See, that's what I'm saying. You could think about it as your gases also. So that's your nanocluster of gases. But in dual polarity electrochemistry, you're balancing and bonding everything. In this particular case, you're bonding it to neutral. So I got a plus minus in there. So that's a -1 to 1 neutral ion. Okay, so that's what we're doing. We're taking ambient water, going past nano into single molecule, single ion. Now this isn't what we're turning the surface water into. This is what we're using as the delivery system for the gases to the surface water. Okay? Oh, so this also represents how, you know, waterborne pathogens hide within clusters. Okay, but you could replace those pathogens and think about that as your gas bubbles that you're trying to trap within clusters so that you can use them. I know it's kind of a stretch there, but you know, I'm just trying to work with what I got. I need to create a PowerPoint just on this subject, but you can understand what I'm saying using this. So if you think about this as gases, now just think, I was doing it on alkaline water. So this is tailored towards alkaline. Just think about it as the opposite. Okay, so your nanoclusters are always imbalanced. That's why they're clusters. Okay. If you have a way to control both sides, you never have clusters. Although you can keep your acidic side and you can keep your basic side. We're just going through this very briefly. So that's when you can charge both sides. Nano is when you can only charge one side and the rest goes to waste. And of course, like I said, consider that to be the opposite because it could go either way. You could use the anode or the cathode. In that case, you're using the cathode. You're creating hydrogen rather than reactive oxygen. In this way, you're creating hydrogen on this side, you're creating a reactive oxygen on this side. Okay. Electrochemistry's version of hypochlorous acid. Hydrogen peroxide, hypochlorous acid. Now, here's the thing. Okay, so before we go on to the next one. So the next one, what we're going to do, so this is the manufacturing method. So, like I said, you could look this up so that you can read everything, but that's not really what we're talking about. But this is how it's separated. This is how it's charged. This is where you get your hydrogen from. This is where you get your reactive oxygen from. Okay? And then what it's going to do is it's all going to be dissolved into those molecules. It's not you're not trying to infuse it in between clusters because there is no clusters. This represents cluster free. That has to do with the ionic product. You want to understand more about the ionic product, you're going to have to go back to one of my previous videos. I'm not going to go through it again. So this is just basically the same as the one we just did, but without all the verbiage in there. Okay? So what we're going to talk more about is what happens when you create all this reactive oxygen along with hydrogen, and then you send it back out as a neutral electrolyzed water. You hear that term used all the time. This is neutral electrolyzed water. If you're not producing this, then you're just using a play on pH. This water, as neutral electrolyzed water, has no pH. It's a single dual polarity ion in neutral because it's bonded -1 to 1, so its nature is neutral. And we did a whole video on that. You could go back to that to understand that better. We're not going to go through it again. I'm just trying to tell you where we are with what I'm about to show you. Okay? So we're using a neutral generator that charges both sides, joins them back together. So this is how it dissolves the single bubble gases into a single molecule of water. So as you're creating your reactive oxygen right here, and you're creating your version over here of sodium hydroxide, your reactive oxygen is bonding to the sodium hydroxide and storing at high pH like a hyperchloride. Basically. I mean, that's the simplified version of it. So all of that, you can dial in the pH to what you want, because you're dialing in the pH by polarity. You're not using buffers or anything like that. And you've already balanced everything coming through. So now you have total control over what the pH is. So if you want more reactive oxygen, then you can put more of a positive dominant charge on the single dual polarity ions. If you want more hydrogen, or you want to be up in that range, in the higher pH range, then you put more negative charge dominancy on the ion. So that's what you do. So now in the context of what we're talking about, we're going to want to put more of a positive charge on the flow. But not so much that you got to dive down deep. That's got nothing to do with it. Forget chemical rules. We're talking dual polarity electrochemistry now. Okay, so what you're doing is you're just stabilizing an environment for the reactive oxygen to be dominant so that it can go out and find everything. You're keeping the negative charge. And why? Because what charge does, you're keeping the positive charge. Why? Because what charge does cyanobacteria have? Negative. So now you're able to find it easier. All right? So that goes much deeper, but I'm just giving a simple explanation of what it's a interaction of attraction. So the higher the positive charge you can put on, just think about the same as in agriculture when you're delivering nutrients to a plant. You have to put a high dominant charge, and in this case the same thing. You have to put a positive charge so it can drive to the negative environment, because the negative environment's not going to move the other way. It doesn't have any energy. So in this case, it doesn't have any energy. So you have to have the energy in the opposite. So that is how it finds it. That is how it works. And we would have to get into the whole absorption thing to understand the bioselectivity of the entire thing. So it's delivering single bubble gases in a single molecule that has 6.45 ionic product in dual polarity and has the ability to travel through an aquaporin. That's how it delivers its chlorine. It doesn't need oxidation, and it doesn't need corrosion. So it doesn't have to burn or dissolve. So it has the ability to travel through, and because it's all natural through sodium chloride, it's naturally bioselective. It goes after what it's supposed to go after, but doesn't go after anything else, which is a very deep subject. And here again, we're not going to get into that. It just would take it too far. So here's the example of hydrothermal, let's say. So we're going to start with a slightly acidic water, and we're going to charge it and end up with a slightly acidic at 6.8, 6.9 pH. Okay, so but in the context of delivering it to surface water, we will probably make it a little stronger than what we do in a batch. All I have here to show is a batch, but the batch is going to drive the point. Okay, so enough with the illustrations. Let's get to the batch. So I'm inside. I had to shut everything off, otherwise you wouldn't hear a thing I say. So here's the unit right there. Okay, so that's the unit that we're using to charge a 500-gallon tank outside. Now that 500-gallon tank outside is on well water. Right here. And as you can see, the filter don't look bad. It looks clean. There's a softener system on it. This filter here has got a little bit of debris and stuff in there, but not bad. But you don't see no green or nothing because it doesn't get hit by UV. All right? So the same water, just to qualify that this water is live, the same water is fed to this RO right here, because this is what I use for my drinking water, okay? And I purposely didn't change the filter. I wanted it to get green enough so that you could see that the water is alive coming through this well. There's this in the afternoon, this gets sunlight on it. So that's why it'll grow the algae and stuff in there where the other filter won't. So this same water right here, I'm going to show you next what happens when you electrolyze it. And you're using, all the ROS properties made at the anode in electrochemistry. So that's this filter right here. And you see how brown and orange it is. Let me get in closer. You see how that's all orange and brown? And it's even here where it gets hit by sunlight. You can see the sunlight's on it. There's no green in it. So it oxidized. Let me put this back in here for a second. It oxidized all the bacteria, all the living organisms, okay? And then, you know, what happens then is they start acting as a coagulating agent and pick up some stuff like the hardness in the water and the stuff like that. And so that's why it turns orange. But the bottom line is that's all neutralized. And not only that, but typically I got all these other filters because sometimes we're doing filter runs. You know, we'll start with 0.35, then we'll go to 1 micron, then we'll go to 5 micron. I think that one's a 5. It's either a 5 or a 1. But generally, when I'm just running, because filters are expensive, and I'm just running and I'm not doing anything for anybody, I just throw a 5 in there. I don't need anything other than that. So that keeps the batch tank clean. Now, also, I don't know if it's going to show on the video, when it comes to scale for hydrothermal, if you could see that junk in there, that would normally be scale in a system, but we just turn it into like a sediment, and then it'll settle wherever. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's gonna make for a crazy video. Crashed and burned. I don't know, something happened to my my stand here. But anyway, this is the system right here. Hang on, I gotta put this back in here. I'm not gonna remake this video because of it. I don't know, my whole thing took a crap. Oh, I'm having a hell of a time now. All right, so I got this system here. I gotta turn it back on in order to show you how it works. So I got just enough pressure in the tank to keep it running. Okay. So we're just going to start her back up. And then once it starts running, so it tells you how many ECs it's running in the water right now. And then you could go forward. We're applying 6 amps and we're applying 10 volts at the moment. And then the rest is just settings. So this is the unit though. And there's my screwdriver. It just has a chamber down here that everything runs through. So that's where all the electrolysis happens. So, but it's all programmed by that. So then we'll go outside. So hello, my doggies. Oh, ow, jeez, get out of my way, dummy. Ay, ay, ay. These dogs, they like to get right up underneath your feet and then they want to complain when they get stepped on. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? Shoot. Get back, doggies. I got to turn down the water. Ugh. There we go. Gotta have the water on. So I got this big tank right there, okay? Really, I need a bigger tank. It should be 10,000 gallon for that unit, but I don't need that big of a tank here. So it sits out here in the direct sunlight. As soon as the sun comes up, you can see it's already hitting the wall there. It'll be right on that tank, okay? So you saw the algae. You saw the algae on the other filter, but you are not going to see no algae in here. I don't know, I can't see. And then my pump just kicked on, so let's see if we can see our vortex start to build. It takes a minute. You see how nice and clean this tank is though. There's nothing in there. The water's crystal clear. And now I can see the gas bubbles are starting to come back because we just turned the unit back on. So it takes a second. You'll never see them in the video. At least I don't think so. But the whole thing's filled with gas bubbles now. Usually a little vortex starts to build in the middle. I don't know if it will or not. But anyway, there you go. So, you know, this whole tank, I know from experience, you know, if it shuts down and for whatever reason, and I don't have my unit running on it for about 3 or 4 days, this whole tank will turn green. So sometimes I have to run experiments. You know, it's a bonus for me to use this system on my home. I only get to use it on my home whenever I'm not using it for something else. And so, but then when I have to take it off, then I have to maintain this tank with my chlororgano in order to keep it from growing everything. And of course, it's not doing my vortex because I must have changed something. Oh, I see why. It's because of the way the tube is laying. But anyway, you get the idea. So that, I don't know, maybe now you can see the gas bubbles, not sure. Try to get it down in here. But you notice the big thing is you don't see any gas bubbles coming to the top. Okay? And the reason for that is very simple. All my gases are dissolved within molecules of water. When they're released, the interaction between the reactive oxygen and the hydrogen forms oxygen, and that's the bubbles that you actually see traveling underneath the surface. And the reason that they never make it to the surface is because the byproduct, once they're in there long enough, is they convert back to water. So that's it. There you go. You want to see the most efficient gas bubble system on the market today for anything that has to do with water treatment. It's advanced high amp dual polarity. You just can't beat it. Nobody else dissolves their gases in single molecules of water with 6.45 ionic product, eliminating the van der Waals effect, maximizing ionic product, and maximizing bromian motion. Enough said. Have a great weekend. About time for me to go jump on my Harley.